Hi, I'm Michelle. I want to share with you a little theory I call the storm theory of success. I learned it quite a few years ago when my brother and we were going to boarding school in Australia, in Toowoomba. I went to Toowoomba Fairholme Presbyterian Girls College, and my brother went to Toowoomba Grammar. Loved it, loved Australia, great experience. But we lived in Papua New Guinea, up on the Solomon Islands, back when Bougainville was part of the Solomon Islands. So anyway, my brother and I were headed back to Bougainville, and the flight was from Brisbane up to Port Moresby. And I was 17 and my brother was 16. And, we didn't have a care in the world, as you don't at that time of life usually. Anyway, bopping along, we thought the flight was a little bumpy. It was bumpy. It was getting bumpier. And then it started raining, and it was raining more. And this was not a big plane. I think maybe totally 40 seats on the plane. It was a prop plane, and it was getting bounced around pretty good. More rain, more lightning, thunder, and it was getting worse and worse, darker and darker. And the plane was dropping and heaving and pitching in every direction. We probably should have been a little more frightened at that point, but we were just kind of interested. What was really entertaining was there was a nun sitting at the front, and she wouldn't get back in her seat. She was kneeling, and she had a rosary, and she was praying quite loudly. Maybe it helped. But anyway, the stewardess and she were kind of at it, and there was a couple of indigenous folks in the back of the plane, and they were making a whole nother set of noises. So between the crashing and the banging and the plane flopping all over the place, it was pretty raucous, and it was starting to get a little worrisome. My brother then, who was sitting by the window, said, "Hey, check it out." And I looked over, and the engine was on fire. And whether the pilot feathered the engine or the rain put it out, we don't know. But it was a pretty tough situation, and the more we flew, the more rain, the more lightning, the more thunder, the more bouncing around the electric on the plane had gone out. It was getting really hot and muggy in there. There was no air. And it wasn't looking too good. It was, fires in the engines generally aren't a good thing, and it wasn't a big plane. And pilot wasn't saying anything to us. Then he eventually came on, and he said, "I need time to think." And, you don't know quite what to do with that. I was like, okay, you're flying the plane still, right? Anyway, then pretty soon he says, "I'm going into the eye of the hurricane." Well, we didn't know it was a hurricane till that point. We probably should have known that. But I don't know, have you ever been in the eye of a hurricane? I know there's people that purposely fly into eyes of hurricanes, like the Navy and all the weather people do it all the time. But it was a new experience to us. And the pilot flew us into this eye of the hurricane where all the sound went out of the plane. And for a minute, my brother and I thought, wait, is the other engine running? That can't be good. And then we could kind of feel the rumble a little bit, but otherwise it was so quiet. And it was gray-green. It was like Twilight Zone. And at the perimeter of this eye of the hurricane, you could see all the black, nasty gray clouds and lightning on the perimeter. It was weird. And by now, Mike and I were holding hands, which, we're teenagers. We have a sister and brother. We don't hold hands. But it was pretty cool, and it was pretty comforting. So the next thing the pilot says, and it seemed like we were in that Twilight Zone for a long time. Have no idea how long it was. So first he said, "I gotta think." And we thought that he came on and said, "I'm thinking." Okay, that somehow was comforting. It wasn't comforting to know that we were in a hurricane, but it was comforting to know that he was thinking. That was an action. And while we were in this sort of Twilight Zone suspended, I think we were all like, okay, what are we thinking? It kind of gave us a mission too. Well, the next thing that the pilot said was, "I made a decision." And he didn't give us too much time to think what his decision was. We didn't hear what his decision was. Then he said, "We're headed back to Keynes. Hang on." It's a good thing that he didn't give us a lot of time to think about that hanging on piece, because when he said hang on, in that second, he literally took the plane into a nosedive out of the eye of that hurricane. And it didn't seem to be going too well. We were literally plummeting toward the ocean. And you could tell, my dad was a pilot, and then I'd done a little bit of that. So we knew he was trying to pull the nose of the plane up, but he couldn't. He'd worked and worked at it. I don't know if there was a co-pilot. It was, like I said, a small plane, and it was quite a few years ago. But anyway, it was a pretty rough flight. And pretty soon, he got the nose up a little more and a little more, and we were getting pretty close to the ocean. But anyway, bumpy, bang, bang, things not good, you know. And the next thing he said was, we're going to crash land a little bit at Keynes, so hang on. And it was sort of funny at that point. We didn't care if we crash landed. We were just kind of pleased we weren't in the ocean. And it was a little bit of a wobbly landing, but quite an impressive landing, really. This was one skilled pilot. Later, my brother and I heard that he'd been a World War II pilot in the Pacific, and I'm sure he'd been in lots of storms. So anyway, flippity floppity, wing, boom, zoom, and in fire trucks, and we landed in Keynes. And my brother and I thought, well, that was cool. But what was really amazing was they told us, if you want to wait, we're going to fix the plane and we can go back sometime tonight. Otherwise, it'll be tomorrow. Do you want to wait? Of course, the nun, she boogied out of there. No way she was getting back on a plane. And my brother and I, like, sure, whatever. And sure enough, about, 8 hours later, we got back on the same plane. And here's the amazing thing, with the same pilot. Now, I don't know about you, but if I would have been the pilot through all of that, I would have said, you know what? That was a day's work. I'm not doing that again for a while. But no, he was up for it. He was ready to go. And sure enough, he flew us into Port Moresby that night. It was a beautiful night. Oh my goodness. Some of the starlit nights in the Pacific are pretty remarkable. So what were the principles that I learned? The storm theory of success. So here they are, simply. Number one, if you are flying in the storm and things are not going well, stop flying in the storm, especially if you got a wing on fire, and stop and think. If you have to get in a closet and just give yourself time to think, stop doing what you're doing and think. Then obviously in that time while we were hanging out in the eye of the hurricane, he was doing a second thing. He was formulating all of his options and his plans. And he was going through them and thinking, I can do this, I can do that. I don't know what his options were. Keep flying towards Port Moresby, try to ditch the plane in the ocean. I have no idea what he was thinking. But he weighed his options and he went through some plans, right? Then the third thing he said was, I made a decision. Okay, that was pretty cool. But what he did next, which, was a good thing we didn't have time to think of it, but he said, hang on. He took immediate action, right? And so those were 4 cool things that he did. And then while he was taking the action, and it was kind of bumpy and things were like, okay, we're plummeting to the ocean and the plane is broken. And, I don't know if he had radio. I don't know what he had left, because lightning had clearly struck the plane multiple times. When we got off, we could see the black spots and some missing pieces. But anyway, the 5th thing he did was he kept course correcting. When the plane was going down and it wasn't working, he didn't just go, well, shoot, I guess we're going down. He kept trying to pull the nose up until it was finally successful. And he got us safely to Keynes. I don't know who that pilot was, just such a hero in my life. But those are the storm theory of success. Stop and think, make a plan, right? Make a decision, take action, and keep correcting your course. I'm grateful. We made it to Port Moresby. It was pretty cool. Probably if that happened today, I don't know if I'd be more like the nun. But anyway, the storm theory of success. I hope it helps you with those 5 things. Thank you.